Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez. And for today's episode, I'll be interviewing our special guest, Sophia Dias, who will be sharing her story of going through a very difficult divorce and how things spiraled downwards for her, but also how she was able to find resilience and do amazing things with her life and overcome all of those struggles that she was facing. So stay tuned for this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. For today's episode, I'm here with Sophia Dias. Sophia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Ryan. I'm super excited to be here.
So, Sophia, I was reading a bit of your bio, and it says that you're an international speaker. You have also overcome so much difficulties and negativities in life, and now you're doing fashion. You're a chef. You're doing music. It sounds like you are an amazing person doing so many amazing things. And in this interview, we want to hear all about your story. Does that sound good?
It sounds wonderful.
Okay, so I was reading your bio, your story, and unfortunately, like many of the other survivors in this podcast who come as guests, there were difficulties that you have encountered. Can you share with us some of those difficulties that you have encountered? What were those things that have been hard in your life, if you're willing to share?
Well, one of the greatest and the only biggest challenge in my life was specifically created by a person who was closest to me, a former spouse, who strategically, with the help of 9 other people who were all close friends, I knew all of them, he strategized my demise. He strategized to have me killed whilst we were living together in a marriage. And it was very challenging because this former spouse controlled every aspect of my life. I worked with him. I traveled with him. He knew my ins and outs. And instead of just asking me for a simple divorce in Chicago, where I moved to work in his business, I was abandoned essentially in a country, which is America, where I have no family ties and just a handful of friends. And it was extremely challenging on every front psychologically. I mean, I knew what he was up to, but I did not realize that I would be abandoned as how an ignorant person abandons their pet on the streets. I had a few dollars in my bank account. He wiped out my retirement, investment, checking, savings account. I had no access to a credit card. All of my airline miles for about 18 years, I gave all of my business to United Airlines, which I love flying with them. And I had a few million miles. So all of my miles were wiped out. So essentially, picture yourself in a position, you're in a foreign country, the home that you're living in is under foreclosure, you have no money at all, and you have no airline miles. So he essentially just left me to die, because in a situation like that, it takes a tremendous amount of courage, determination to bring yourself out of that shock. And I wasn't even able to fly out to meet family in London, or fly out to meet close friends in New York. I called up United Airlines one morning as I wanted to see my friends face to face and explain to them the challenge that I was put in. And the staff at the other end of the phone just said, "Miss Diaz, you have 0 miles." in your account. So, that was the strategy. I was just left to die.
And
That's the core of it. That's the gist of my story.
so he just abandoned you and he took all your miles and your money.
Yes.
Okay, now that sounds very, one, depressing, of course, also traumatizing, and the betrayal that is involved. That's a very difficult experience for anybody to go through. But yet you were able to still overcome. Can you share with us a little bit about maybe what were the steps in life that helped you to get out of that dark moment in your life?
Psalm 23.
Psalm 23.
The Lord is my shepherd. Though I walk through the darkest valley, I shall fear no evil. Psalm 23 was a psalm that I grew up in, reading throughout my boarding school. And I would not have been here. I would not have survived the brutal situation that I was strategically, brutally put in without the help of the American people, without the help of my friends from every corner of the world who supported me, friends from South Africa, India, Chicago, England, Italy. I didn't have funds to purchase groceries for myself, let alone pay for my gym, food for my 3 pets, 3 cats that I adopted from Paws and Anti-Cruelty Society. They have been with me since 2009. And a large dog, a Bernese Mountain Dog. If any of your audience is familiar with a Bernese Mountain Dog, those breeds of dogs are big boned. So he was 165 pounds. He passed away in May, but we were inseparable. He was my best friend. We did everything together, and his food, his vet visits. I mean, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I just did not have. I had to essentially grow up. I had to read my Psalm 23, roll up my sleeves, pick up my phone, and just ask friends for work to give me a job.
So you mentioned how prayer or the psalm, how it's helped you to perhaps, let's say, give you some anchor in life, give you some strength. And then you mentioned also how during that separation with your husband, you couldn't see your friends. He took all your miles away. He really left you in a dark and difficult situation. Can you share with us how did it feel when friends did talk to you? And because sometimes when people are in a dark period in life, it's hard to reach out to friends because maybe there is shame, or maybe there's a feeling of uh maybe there won't be a connection. But it sounds like your friends from all parts of the earth, they were very welcoming. How did that feel?
It felt really good, but I have to say, Ryan, that some of the closest friends that regularly came, dined at my home, wined at my home, and were close, those friends never returned my calls for help. So I have had my fair share of friends absolutely not even owning that they knew me. So, it goes both ways. I was really very grateful to all of those friends who reached out. There was one girlfriend, she put her credit card down for my gym. I used to attend the East Bank Club gym where I exercise regularly 2 times a day, morning and evening. And then another girlfriend put her credit card for my dry cleaning. And another one put her credit card down at Chris's, which is a pet shop in Chicago, in Bucktown. So whatever I needed for my 4 pets, it was all taken care of.
So that's beautiful. Well, first, it's beautiful that you had friends who were there in your darkest moments, in your hardest times, and at the same time, it's a sad reality when you see that people who you think are your friends, they dine with you, they laugh with you, and they have a good time. But when you're at your lowest points, it sounds like they didn't even know you.
Oh, there was zero communication.
Oh,
No calls were ever returned. And if they did see me across the street, they would walk by pretending that they hadn't seen me. So, God sort of lets you know who your friends are in very challenging situations.
so after your separation, it sounds like he really left you, as you said, for dead. He really left you in a dark place. You're losing your friends and you're seeing who your true friends are. What happened next during your journey towards becoming this resilient and powerful woman that you are today?
Well, I did file for divorce twice, and I had excellent attorneys. May God bless them. They all did a fantastic job. And we were, in my autobiography, I wrote about room 3010. And I also wrote a song called Room 30, Welcome to Room 3010, in my album Bulletproof. And Room 3010 depicts the horror, the brutalization of a human soul that the presiding judge embarked upon for 4 years. We were before a female judge in room 3010 at the Daly Center, Cook County, and the presiding judge took it upon her that I had zero rights. I had rights to no marital funds. She even asked me to get a job as a court reporter in her courtroom. During the height of COVID, people were committing suicide. Mm-hmm. People were losing jobs. People were in a depressed state. And the judge had her own agenda. There was a clear conflict of interest. When my former spouse made a petition to sell the marital home without any evidentiary hearing, she put the house for sale. There were about $20 million unaccountable for, and that was the only roof over my head. And she gave the job of a realtor to sell my home to her close and best friend. And in the judicial system, in the law society, all the attorneys know the judges and they know their personal lives at times. And my attorneys, a few of them, clearly suggested that the realtor and the judge were close and personal friends. So the realtor got the job, and I think she made about $65,000 after selling my home. And the judge went, I believe, and I write about this in detail, she went above and beyond her power as a judge. And some of the attorneys clearly said that the power of being a judge had gone to her head, and she almost felt like she was God. So each time she would see me in the courtroom, she would berate me, yell at me, scream at me, humiliate me, insult me, yell at me. And my attorneys had no clue why she was behaving this way. Suffice to say that, she had other things on her agenda.
So in your story so far, you've lost your spouse, the betrayal, you've lost your friends, and now even in the judicial system, it seems like everybody is making your life a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
What kept you? You've already mentioned the Psalm 23, but what actions did you have to take to find uh, strength? Because that's just such a dark moment, and I think that maybe many in the audience may be wondering, what did you do? Where did you find the strength to overcome this?
Like, I knew it from my heart that, I've done nothing wrong. I did not steal, cheat, lie, or cause anybody any harm. So my conscience was clear. And I knew that this too shall pass. And all I had to do was really work hard on myself. I continued doing the charitable work that I did. I am still on the women's board, Catholic Charities. So we did a lot of charitable work at the Madonna House in Chicago. I would host arts classes for younger children, cooking demonstration classes for destitute mothers. And then, the work went on to the House of the Good Shepherd. And I also, on a monthly basis, would cook gourmet dinners at home and transport it with the help of a team of people, transport it to the residents of the tent city, which is on the street of Canal and Roosevelt on the south side of Chicago. So that kept me very grounded too, because these are just human beings put in very challenging situations, and they just live in tents in a place called Tent City.
So let me get this straight. So while there's turmoil all around your life and different aspects of your life, you still find the time to serve others. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
How did that make you feel where you were able to serve others and see the smiles on their faces?
God's people, it's called paying it forward. And I've been doing it all my life. I've been working and volunteering in ghettos. I've traveled all across Africa. I chaired the Children's Cancer Foundation charitable organization in China. Recently, last year, I was in the south of India, Trivandrum, and I volunteered at a special school called Travancore School, where they housed autistic and severely Down syndrome um, uh, and physically challenged children. And right after that, I volunteered at a home for the elderly, the abandoned elderly, people in their 90, 95 years old, who really have nowhere to go. So they, live in this nice home, and they are cared for. Many other people, Ryan, who give their time and their energy and their money to take care of these elderly people.
So you've really given, even though you don't have much, it sounds like you're still giving your talents and you're still helping so many people. Thank you for doing that, because I know that is challenging, taking care of especially the elderly, those who have been forgotten. And I know from my own experience that they must have some joy seeing someone who cares and is with them, especially in their last days. So again, thank you for making the time for these people. And you sound like it sounds like uh, you have been going through so many difficult circumstances, but I'm just so amazed that despite all these difficult circumstances, you still find time to do extraordinary things. So we've talked about right now your charity, being generous with your talents, your gifts. But now I kind of want to start asking about your other talents, because you've mentioned music, and I I would like to ask, how did that talent come about? Was that just something new after all of this trauma experience, or did you always have a love for music?
I always did have a love for music, and in boarding school, I did, sing for the choir, but I'm not professionally trained. Music came about as, by accident. I was in Turkey, in Istanbul, and I was working out of her factory in Bursa, Bursa. They have the finest clothiers in the world in Bursa, and I have lots and lots of good friends in Turkey. So I would go back and forth from Istanbul to Bursa and back to the hotel. And I was sitting in the hotel balcony one evening, and the plight of a lawmaker from England who's a dual citizen of Great Britain and Iran. Her name is Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, a very prominent lady. Many presidents and prime ministers worked tirelessly for her freedom. She was held against her will in Iran for 6.5 years. And I wrote a song for her in French called Psalms 23, which is Psalm 23. And I changed the lyrics and I wrote my own lyrics where I'm questioning our then Prime Minister of Great Britain, Mr. Boris Johnson, as to where is the justice for Nazanin Ratcliffe and where is the justice for, the people living on the streets in tent cities. So it was just a very, it's like a dialogue with various people. And I was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with one of the finest music producers in the world, who has produced music for very many people. His name is Clive Hunt. And I called Clive and I said, Clive, I've got this one single and I want to come and record it at Tough Gong Recording Studios in Jamaica, where I spent very many holidays there growing up as a child. And I have a really deep connection with the people over there. And Tough Gong is one of the most sought after recording studios in the world. It was, built by the late Robert Nesta Marley. We know him as Bob Marley. And Clive said, well, come over. And I said, sure. And 1 week after, I was in Kingston working with some of the finest, the most sought after musicians in the world, all under one roof. It took about 32 people to get one single, including 4 music engineers. And I had another great privilege of working with a Grammy Award-winning music engineer called Shane Brown, who's a dear friend, and he worked on the Bulletproof album.
So this is an album. It's not just a single. It's a whole album that you have.
Oh, Psalm 23 was a single.
Okay.
So I recorded that in 2020, and then Bulletproof came out. I recorded it in 2022.
So here's something that I'm really enjoying about your story is that, well, first of all, the sad part, we hate to hear the difficulties, but that's part of your story. And it's just amazing for me as a listener to hear you doing all these endeavors. Like you said earlier, that you've written your story, you have your music going, you're doing fashion, and these are things that people dream of. For example, people will say, and this is actually me earlier, I was saying, man, I hope I win the lottery. If I were to just have $1,000, I would be doing this. I would be doing that. And in your story, you lost everything and you still went for it. What was it in you? Was it a thought? Was it an emotion that kept you persistent?
It was my faith.
Your faith.
My unshakable faith in God, in the Holy Bible. There's nowhere in the Bible, I've reread it several times, giving up is not mentioned in the Bible. Failure is not a word in there. Faith is unshakable faith.
And you really do have unshakable faith.
I do.
Yes, and it shows through all that you're doing and with the music. Can you share with us a little bit about your album? Because you've already spoken about Psalm 23 and then What can the listeners find in is it Bulletproof?
Bulletproof.
Yeah, what can they discover in this album?
Well, it's a 7-track album. I wrote all the lyrics myself. Each song is based on real life events that occurred in my life. And I'm available on about, I think I'm distributed in 22 countries. And, the official music videos are on YouTube and Vivo, and I'm on Spotify and Deezer and all of these platforms. The album Bulletproof is not sugar coated. It's, lock and load, mate. This is real life. This happened to me. I lived through it. Did I suffer? Yes, God, I did suffer. Relentless suffering was upon me from every side, but orchestrated by one human being who was a former spouse, ex-spouse, orchestrated everything in his power to have me killed. And he failed miserably. Yes, of course, he got all the money, and I'm sure he's enjoying it somewhere in China. But it is what it is. Bulletproof does not define Sophia Dias. What defines me is today, the present, as you said, the consistent work that I've done, just working with homeless people for the last 20, 30 years of my life. That itself suggests that I celebrate God by celebrating his people. I don't really have to go to church every day, to show my faith. Serving a complete stranger some good food on the streets is the same act as going to mass.
And was there ever a period during this darkness where you felt like saying, you know what, forget it. I'm going to lose my faith, or I'm going to just step away. I'm going to step away from the faith. Did you ever have any thoughts like that cross your mind? And if so, how were you able to get through that?
No, that thought never crossed my mind.
So you've really been uh, grounded with, as you said, with scripture and with reaching out. Um, I think that you are really showing a good example. And lastly, I before we start wrapping things up, you've also mentioned that you have fashion.
I
Uh,
do. I
what
have
is that? How is that going? Is that also something that's did you learn that from boarding school, or is this something that is
My mother
new?
was a clothier, so I started, creating and designing at a very early age, and I started a small company called Dias Designs, creating sunglasses and unisex clothing line. For it's fashion is it's a matter of choice, So I have unique designs that I create for special clients, and it is what it is. It makes me very happy creating things, writing books, and culinary is also something else that gives me great joy. I've been very fortunate and blessed to have been able to study at some of the finest culinary schools across the world, and also in homes of people who teach, who give culinary classes in Paris, in Sardinia, in Italy, Switzerland, England, India, China, Chicago at the Le Cordon Bleu. So that's another great passion, another great way of serving God by serving his people.
Well, it sounds like you have so many fruitful adventures going on in your life. That's amazing.
I've been busy, Ryan.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like now that we're coming like towards the end, what advice do you have for perhaps other women or even other men or anybody out there who is in a situation where they feel that they've been betrayed and they feel like they can't get out of this rut. What advice would you have for them?
Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Asking for help is the most courageous thing that you would ever do. Asking for help it takes a lot of courage and strength. The answer from the other side might be no, but don't stop asking for help. It's the bravest thing that you can do for yourself, for your children, for your family. I never stopped asking for help. I did get rejected, though, several times.
That was a beautiful answer. I think even I needed to hear that. So thank you. And where can where can I find your books, your music? Is there one website or how does that work?
SophiaDias.com.
SophiaDias.com.
And all my books are on Amazon. The autobiography is called Blondie-Proof, which when translated into English is called Bulletproof. And then the music is everywhere. It's on Amazon Music, Google Music, Apple Music, Pandora, iTunes.
And you have your own YouTube channel also?
Yes, I believe it's called Sophia Dias.
Okay, so the audience, go and subscribe, like, and go to Sophia Diaz's page so we can, promote your work because it sounds like you're doing so many amazing things.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for listening. This has been the Truth That Heals podcast with Sophia Diaz, and I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez. Have an amazing day. Hello, listeners. This is the host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and I wanted to thank you for taking the time to listening to this episode with Sophia Diaz and for all of your support. Again, I wanted to remind you, go ahead and check out all of the links of Sophia Diaz. I'll be putting that in the show notes. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. If you are listening to this podcast through Spotify or Apple or any other podcast platform, please feel free to leave a review, hopefully a 5-star review, as that really helps to boost this podcast. Again, thank you so much to all of the guests who have been on this podcast, like Sophia Diaz, and I want to give a special thank you to the audience who have been with me, especially those who have been with me from the beginning. You are the best. I love you all. Have a fantastic day. Peace.